I want to talk about what they didn't tell you in Sunday school about Rosh Hashana. And I want to basically put it all on the table right now. Put everything on the table that we need to know. I feel to get to the kernel, everything we need to know, as much as we could probably put on the table in a few minutes together, to really get to the inner light of Rosh Hashanah. We've spoken about a little bit of this before, but I don't think we went all the way into the Nakuda, into the point. And with Hashem's help, we'll try to bring down something very, very important now so we could have the best year possible and have a very, very successful Rosh Hashanah for everybody. So Rosh Hashanah has many names. It has Yom Hadin. It's the day of judgment. It's the day of the coronation of the king, the coronatsia. Rosh Hashanah is also called Yom Teruah, the day of the blowing of the Teruah. And like we mentioned in the Kabbalah books, it's called Yom HaNesira, the day of the cutting apart. So I want to begin with the day of the cutting apart and show how really that is what Yom Hadin means, that is what Yom Teruah means, that is what it means, the day of the coronation, to really go into that inyan of the Nesira, the cutting apart, and through that to have a new insight on what this day really is, this long day. It's called Yom HaRichta. It's like a 2-day day, a 48-hour day, to really have the best year possible and get the point, the pintle of what it means to be a Yid and what it means to be in existence on the day of Rosh Hashanah. So on Rosh Hashanah, it's somebody's birthday, Adam and Eve. It's the day of the creation of Adam and Chava. It's the birthday, the creation of Adam and Chava, of Adam and Eve. And the Torah says that they're created as one. And the Gemara explains that they were created back to back. Siamese twins, back to back. And we'll see that being back to back is very significant. And that on Rosh Hashanah, what Hashem did is He took Adam and Chava and He cut them apart. He sawed them apart, that they could be separate entities. Now, what's the benefit of being created together as one? You and your wife, you're always bonded. You never lose each other. It's very wonderful. But to be created together, in Kabbalah we call this Ocher Ba'ocher. We're not Kabbalists, we're just simple Tamimim, trying to understand a little bit of Torah Hashem. But this is what our great teachers have guided us, is that to be created as one is something called back to back, Ocher Ba'ocher, which means whenever you're forced into a relationship, whenever there's something that's put upon you, that's called back to back. That's called, I didn't choose this. And therefore there's a natural feeling when something is forced that there's a resentment. That's why, I'm sure, and I would have never done something like this, but kids rebel against their parents naturally because there's a feeling like, I didn't choose this. So there's a back-to-backness, or at least back from the side of the child, that I want to split apart. And that back-to-back of Adam and Chava, even though they were one, it's very beautiful to be one, but if you're forced into that, you don't feel like it's yours, and you feel distant, and you feel resentment. So a back-to-back, when something is to the back, it means I'm not interested in it. In the same way, if I would turn my back on you, it's very disrespectful, you know what I'm saying? It's probably just awkward and making everybody uncomfortable right now that my back is to you. Even though I didn't physically move anywhere, I'm right here, and I'm even talking to you with my back to you. But we feel it's like, whoa, he's disinterested. And even body language, if somebody goes like, yeah, I'm interested in what you're saying, Rabbi. I promise, I didn't leave the shiur. Yeah, but you did. You completely left. By the way, you could be back to back if you're like this. You know this one? It's under the table so the rabbi doesn't know. That's also called, I put my interest somewhere else. That's called back. I'm back to back. So back to back means something is forced, there's a reason, but I didn't choose it. We see this from the Balatanya also, the idea of something, an energy that's from the back, is, let's say that God forbid there's a criminal and he does something terrible, Hashem Yerachim, and he gets caught and he has to be taken to trial. So he's kept alive. So the jail warden who's bringing him food, do you think he's bringing him food like this? Like, enjoy. Do you think he's bringing him like this? Like a sweet, like, I'm interested in this? I'm interested in the relationship? Or no, I have to give you food because you have to be alive and be brought to judgment. So he, so to speak, throws the food over his shoulder. Like, just like, take it. I'll give you, but I'm disinterested in it. It's interesting. Is anybody interested in the chair they're sitting on? Was your focus on the chair at any point in the last few minutes since you were sitting here with me? No, your back is to it. I'm not putting interest in it. I'm happy it's there, but I'm not putting my focus on the chair. It's serving a purpose, but I'm not putting energy into it. It's from my back. So Adam and Chava being created back to back means they were forced, and there's a disinterest because of that, and there's a natural resentment because of that. And Hashem didn't want that. He wants to cut them apart, that they should be able to now choose to face each other. They should be able to choose to be interested in each other. Now, it's a bit risky, right? Because Adam could go hang out with anybody else he wants. There's other things going on. And Chava could run away. But Hashem wanted that they should find each other to choose each other. That's called, I'm facing you, panim el panim. And by the way, it can get complex in relationships, where let's say one side is interested. So they're giving their panim, but the other side is disinterested. That's called panim ba'achar, or achar ba'panim. That one side is yes, providing interest, but the other side is not interested in the relationship. That gets tricky. What we want to have is panim ba'panim, that both are choosing each other. So Adam and Chava get sawn apart, and now becomes the day, as soon as there's a sawing apart, something very important is created called free will. The ability to now choose and be interested. So Rosh Hashanah is the new year of free will, which is the feature of the human being. That's why we don't make any mention of the first few days of creation. We're not in shul the whole day. Comes Rosh Hashanah, Bereshis, the whole creation of the world was Ba Tishrei. That we should come, Bereshis is the letters, Ba Tishrei, that Tishrei will come. Tishrei is the first day that Adam is created. The whole purpose is to get to the Adam, the human being, that there could be free will. And now there's an opportunity to show interest. I'm interested in you. So all of this is really teaching us something very special. That before we were created, our souls were, so to speak, in heaven. Mitachas kisei hakavod. So we're there, but we're kind of forced into the oneness with God. It's a bit resentful. So on Rosh Hashanah, Hashem cuts our souls off, and that's the creation of man, and puts us now in the world. That's what the song apart really is. Because now we're in this world. There's a lot of other things I could choose. There's a lot of other options. It would have been safer to stay up in heaven, isn't it? Like the great discussion of the Gemara. Is it better that we should be created? Is it noyach? Would it have been easier? It's actually easier not to be created. But it's not better. So now we're in this world. Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of now we're in this world, and we're now separate. Rosh Hashanah is now the opportunity to become face to face with Hashem. Is now to choose the relationship. So do you know what you do the entire day of Rosh Hashanah? You're choosing the relationship. That's why Rosh Hashanah is called the day of the coronation. Is that you're saying, all I want is a relationship with you, Hashem. That's all I want, is that relationship. That's all I want. That's the moment of the free will. And that's why it's called Yom Hadin. The day of judgment. Because what is the judgment on? How much you're choosing the relationship. That's the whole thing. How much am I choosing this relationship? When does the sawing apart happen? On Rosh Hashana? When we hear the shofar. That's why the shofar is the big time. When we hear the shofar, that's the moment of now the sawing apart that's happening, where we're, so to speak, now being split, and we have this opportunity either to run away, or exactly at that moment, just like a king is inaugurated with shofars, to choose the king. That's all we want. It's the Rosh Hashana, it's the New Year, free will. All we want is you. And that's why even the blasts of the shofar are alluding to this. Because how did the shofar begin? With a tekiah. Just perfect still. By the way, in halacha it's better, according to basically all the poskim, that the tekiah blast is a perfectly still blast. As opposed to oh, yeah, what a tekiah. Because the first tekiah blast is the way we looked with God before the world was created. Totally unified. Absolute unity. What's the middle is the trua. That's the cutting apart. That's now separation, multiplicity, separateness. All of us are now getting sliced off. All of that time of the trua and the opportunity you have in the trua is that now you're a separate entity where you choose to reunify, but now that you chose it, panim al panim. And that's the final tekiah. The final tekiah is the choice from the trua to reunify in the tekiah. And that we have different types of trua, because the Torah calls Rosh Hashanah the Yom Trua, and the Gemara says, what's a trua? Is a trua like we do, do? Maybe a trua is what they call a shvarim, do. Or maybe a trua is both. A shvarim trua, do. There's different types of crying. The trua is the time of the splitting apart that allows now for the choosing of reunification. It's the time, it would have been nice to hang out with your wife, like the Zohar says, that you guys are both palgud de gufa, you guys are like two halves of a one. So you can just hang out with your wife in Shemayim. It's very nice. So Hashem says, it's one, but it would be forced. I'm going to take you, I'm going to send you down to this world. And it's not like the guy's wearing he doesn't come out of the womb with a badge on. My name is John, and I'm the soulmate of Judith. And Judith's like, my name is Judith, the soulmate of John. And they're like, oh, great to see it. Like, that was easy. You come into a world where there's so much of a trua, there's so much multiplicity, you got to figure this out and find your way back. And when you find your way back, you come to panim al panim, you're now choosing to reunify. That's the final tekiah. And really, this is what's going to happen in the end of days, is that we're going to have, as the Arizal points out, that God's name, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, is like the name. That's the name. The Shem HaMeforish. That's the name. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei means Haya, Hoveh, Yiyeh, was, the same God that always was for eternity, is here right now. That same God. And Yiyeh will be forever, which means God is above time. Haya, Hoveh, Yiyeh. So the Arizal says that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is also three phases in existence. Haya is God the way everything was before the creation of the world. That's like the first tekiah. It's just Hashem. Hoveh is this period now with the creation. So that's God with creation. That's a big trua. We're all split up. But in the time to come, we're going to get back to the final tekiah. The yiyeh is when we re-emerge into the unity of God, but that we chose it this time. That's the final doo. And what's the last blast that we blow in the sequence? Is it a regular tekiah? It's a tekiah gedola. And that tekiah is doo forever. That tekiah goes on forever. It doesn't actually need to be that long physically. You don't need to be like, yeah, what a blazer. Like Rav Willig says, the master blaster. It doesn't need to be that, it's spiritually long. It's the tekiah gedola is the final tekiah of us going into eternity with God. And that's why, what does it say is going to happen when Mashiach comes? There's going to be what? There's going to be a final tekiah, gedola, a final blast of us going now reunifying with God into eternity. And how do we end Yom Kippur? With that tekiah gedola. That final tekiah gedola is, because the whole journey of getting to Yom Kippur is you're barely here. You've moved from the whole journey of being cut apart on Rosh Hashana, choosing during Aseret Yemei Tshuva, and we hope by the time that you get to Yom Kippur, it's become so crystal clear that all you want is God. That's why we're barely physical, we're like malachim. And at the final pinnacle of Yom Kippur, which the 5 tefillahs of Yom Kippur correspond to the 5 levels of the soul. So the first davening of Yom Kippur corresponds to the nefesh. The next davening of Yom Kippur is the ruach. The next davening of Yom Kippur is the neshama. The mincha is the chaya. And the ne'ilah is the yechida. The yechida is when the essence of your soul, which is connected to God, cracks open. And all you say by Ne'il is Hashem Elokim, Hashem Elokim, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokim, Hashem Echad. Tekiah gedola, Echad. Yom Kippur is spiritually going into the Tekiah gedola. That's the end. And once you're in that much unification, you go into the Sukkah. It's all simcha. Oiz v'chedva b'mkoymai. You go into a place of tremendous love and compassion and protection. You know you're one with Hashem. So in summary, the kernel, and that's why it's Yom Truah. It's the day of the Truah because it's the day that now free will is being formulated. That the Malchus is coming off the Zer Anpin and the Malchus can now turn back to the Zer Anpin and reunify Panim al Panim. And that completion happens Yom Kippur, and the full completion happens Shmini Atzeres, which is called the Yichud HaGomer, Mamish, absolute unity. We should be Zoicha, my dear friends, to understand that when the shofar is blasting, it's the moment that now you're being cut off. That's why people have a custom of getting a new knife before Rosh Hashanah. There's such a thing. Because it says, Achoyte Chaim Lekol Chai, that Hashem is like cutting off life. That people get a knife because they're literally now being cut off to have free will to choose to be face to face with our beloved, panim al panim, that when the shofar is blowing, at that moment there's just one kernel in your heart. We want to unify with you. HaMelech, Yechi HaMelech, Hashem lives, and there'll be goodness for everybody. And when that happens, all the good things that it says happens on Rosh Hashanah, Pekidas HaKaros, all those that are barren start having children. That Sarah and the matriarchs started having children on Rosh Hashanah. And Yosef, who was in jail, comes out of jail on Rosh Hashanah. All of the blessings starts opening up because of one single will. I want to be unified with you, Hashem. We love you. You're the King, and that will then take us into the final Tekiah Gedola. We should be Zoich HaMamish Yitoka B'Shofar Gadol to that great Tekiah Gedola. Should be Zoich HaMamish to Mashiach Tzidkeinu and all the schus of Kedis Yitzchak and all the schus of the Malchias, Zechronis and Shofris, to the holy, holy psukim that we're going to be saying, and have an absolute, clear unity. That Hashem, all we want is you. Meloich al kol ha'olam kula b'chvodecha, with Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mehera v'yameinu. Amen.
Amen.
Have a wonderful, wonderful Rosh Hashana, ksiv v'chsima tova, good gebench to you. Kol tuv.